The second half of our third unit is pretty much all percentages, okay? Not anything else to it really, just always working with percentages. If we have the word percent, it's got two pieces to it, the two syllables, per and cent. If you're talking about the per part, per is like each or every. Talking about like one or something, right? Or for each. What about cent? Huh? How many? 100. So that's what percent is. It's a number out of 100 for each 100, okay? So if you have a percentage of 1,000,000 people, what that's doing is that's making it so if there were 100, that's how many it's talking about. If you had a percentage out of 10 people, it's making it bigger and saying if there were 100 of them, it would be that number. So what it is it's a parts to whole ratio. And with this part to whole ratio, the whole is always 100. So we're going to be obviously using 100 a lot with these problems. Actually, every single one of the percentage problems will use 100. Each percentage can be modeled on a 10 by 10 grid, and it can also always be written as a decimal. Mostly, it can be written as a fraction as well, but not quite all of them can do fractions. But every one of them can be written as a decimal. All right, so if you have 78%, that's 78 over 100, or that's also said 78 hundredths. 78 hundredths. 0.78 is also said 78 hundredths. All right, so if you look at those little square grids in the middle of your sheet, I'm not going to do all three of them or anything, but what it's talking about is if we take a 10 by 10 grid, that gives us 100 squares. So a percent, 35%, is going to fill in 35 of those squares. So if it's 10 by 10, there's 30. And there's 5 more, so that's 35 out of the 100. Okay? And so I think this part's pretty easy to understand or to follow. So we won't do all three of them. And for the ratio, it says part to whole. What's the part? How many? 35 in the whole thing? It is 100. Okay? I think that part of it is at least relatively easy to follow or understand. It's talking about a number out of 100. If you got 100 squares, whatever's filled in is the percentage. Any questions on it? And so we'll skip those other two that are on the sheet. All right, so moving on then. To change from percentages to decimals, decimals to percentage. So a percentage can be written over 100 and then read out loud. 45 over 100, just like the one we had before, that we got 45 hundredths. That's 0.45. Percentages can also be divided by 100. If you divide by 100, basically what you're doing is you're moving the decimal 2 places to the left. So if I have 45%, there's a decimal after the 45, right? So I would move the decimal 2 places to the left. Decimal goes in front of the 45. We got 0.45. Same idea, 87%. Move the decimal 2 spots. We got 0.87. It works for percentages over 100 also. We move the decimal 2 spots. In this case, we get 1.5. It also works for percentages that already have decimals. So if I had 8.5%, When I move the decimal 2 spots, decimal goes here. What happens when there's a blank then? We put a 0. So that would equal 0.085. Okay? So we look, 70%. Decimals after the 70, we move it 2 spots to the left. That gives me 0.70. That 0 at the end is not really necessary, but we can still have it there. If we look at number 5 has a decimal already. So if we're changing it to a percent, we do the opposite. We move it to the right. So if I go 2 spots to the right, 0.28 becomes 28%. Any questions on that? All right, y'all do those other 4. Number 3, Lacey. 0.16, 16 hundredths. Number 4, Judah. 0.37, or again, 37 hundredths. Down here, number 6, Ford. 62%. Number 7, Robert. 90%. Okay? Those should hopefully seem pretty easy, right? Any questions on that? I don't think you'll see a lot where you necessarily have to do that as the actual problem on a test or anything, but there are situations where that's helpful or you need that. So flip that sheet over. So what we're going to do is we're looking at this stuff. We're going to use our proportions to do these percentage problems. So this one's the same as the other side. The whole is always 100. And just like with the other side, it can be written as a decimal. All right, so they show this proportion here. Where it's percent over 100 equals part over whole. I prefer it flipped around with the percent over 100 on the right side. It doesn't make a huge difference though. But when I do it up here, I'm going to have that percent over 100 on the right. All right, for these percentage problems, every proportion I do, I'm going to put 100 on the bottom right. It makes it easier if you are consistent with it. All right, a little easier to remember. So there's 2 types you can have, and find a spot on the sheet to write these down. Part over whole equals percent over 100. Part over whole problems are where, like, you would say if we have 18 students in the class and 10 of them are boys. The part would be the number of boys, 10. The whole would be the number of students, 18 students. Okay? The other one that we're going to work on a lot today are is and of problems, where it's is over of, percent over 100. And that one probably seems or sounds a little bit more strange than part over whole, but you'll see it's not so bad with how the questions are worded. All right, we got that down? And you see, each time I have 100 on the bottom right and percent over 100. So if we look at these 6 problems at the bottom of the sheet there, this first one says what percent? right? It's asking us for the percent. So when we make our proportion, we got 100 on the bottom right. We're trying to find the percent. That means that's where our blank goes. Whatever it's asking for is our blank. You see right there? It says of 20, right? So that means the 20 is my of, is 14. So is over of, percent over 100. In this case, the percent is what it's asking for. The percent's the blank. 100 times 14 divided by 20 gives me 70%. Okay? Everybody see how I set that up? All right, we move on to number 7. This one says, what is? That means the is going to be my blank. That's the top left. I still want 100 on the bottom right. Percent goes over 100. What's my percent for this one? 45. We got 45%. So we got 45 over 100. And then the last little part, it says of 60. So 60 is on the bottom. Any questions on how I set that one up? And then we're multiplying it, 60 times 45 divided by 100. What's that give you? 27. All right. So here's the third way. We still got our proportion, 100 on the bottom right. We got a percentage, so percent goes over 100. That's 25. This time it's asking me of what number? So it's looking for the of. That puts my blank on the bottom. 16 is the is. So we still have is over of, percent over 100. So 16 times 100 divided by 25 is 64. Okay? Any questions on those? All right, y'all do 9, 10, 11 then. All right, number 9. Lily, what'd you get? 126 is correct. So it says, what number is 90%? So we got our 90% of 140. So we cross multiply, we divide, we get 126. All right, number 10, Chastity. 115's correct. This one's saying 40%, so 40 over 100 of what number is 46. And like she said, that's 115. And then last one, number 11, Jeremiah. 12.5 is correct. It says 12 is what percent of 96? And we get 12.5. You can get decimals for these. We'll do some of these problems where it works with money. So obviously you get money numbers where it'll go to 2 decimals. And in some cases even we'll have problems where you'll have to round a little bit, okay? But decimals don't mean anything is wrong. That's just sometimes part of the problem. Any questions on those?